In order to win Mariko's heart, I pretended to be a good girl for 5 years. In the end, he beat me to it and confessed to someone else. I cried my eyes out at Mariko and Leo's house and was caught by his younger brother. Leo, as always, was pure and gentle, hurriedly wiping away my tears. Later, at a bar gathering with friends, I heard a familiar voice from the next table. Why is brother so happy these days? Amidst the swirling smoke, Leo was lazily resting his head on one hand, smiling arrogantly and mischievously. She's been heartbroken for a long time. On weekends, I found myself once again standing at the door of Mariko and Leo's house, holding 2 cups of jasmine milk green tea, and carrying printed test papers and notes. Mariko likes girls who speak softly. To win him over, I played the role of the good girl for 5 years. In front of others, I am the aloof and indifferent Darlene. In front of Mariko, I am the considerate and gentle flower of wisdom. As a friend of Mariko for so many years, everyone in his and Leo's house knows me. I accompany Mariko on mountain hikes and every birthday celebration. Mariko and Leo's parents treat me like a goddaughter and always bring me along to gatherings. Even Mariko's half-brother, I didn't miss out on him either. On weekends, I come to their house to tutor Leo in his studies. Leo is 2 years younger than us and is still in his senior year of high school. I am in the foreign language department and usually tutor some high school students for IELTS and TOEFL. When Mariko's mother casually mentioned that Leo's English was falling behind, I offered to help him with tutoring. Mariko laughed upon hearing this, put his arm around my shoulder like a good buddy, and clinked glasses with me. Thanks a lot, Darlene. He turned to the boy on the couch and said, Leo, you're getting a big bargain. Darlene charges $2,500 for a single tutoring session outside. The boy, who was called Leo, looked up, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. He was wearing a light-colored windbreaker and had a youthful and clean face. He shyly smiled. That's a hassle. When I heard the knock on the door, Mariko's mother hurriedly opened it and welcomed me in. Darlene, I just cut some fruit. I'll bring it to your room later. I thanked her repeatedly, while discreetly searching for that figure in the living room. Leo came out of the bedroom and took the folder from me. Mariko isn't home today. He had something to do and went out. I felt disappointed but forced a smile and said, It's okay. I'm not looking for him today. Have you finished the test papers I gave you last time? Following Leo into the bedroom, I saw the test papers spread out on the desk. As I checked the mistakes, I didn't notice Mariko's mother entering the room. She brought in a plate of cut fruit and said with surprise, Darlene, why did you bring milk tea for Leo? You're too kind. I then remembered that I had bought 2 cups of jasmine milk green tea. It was originally meant for Mariko, who loved that flavor the most, but given the situation, I had to pretend to be nonchalant and handed the milk tea to Leo. I just saw a tea shop on the way and bought it. Leo glanced at me but didn't take it. His mother teased from the side, Look at Darlene. She's so considerate. I milk tea and explaining the questions to you. If you don't come first next time, how will you face Darlene? With Mariko's mother's comment, I took the opportunity to press the milk tea into Leo's hand, smiling and saying, Let's not stand on ceremony. Only then did he take it. After a while, I heard him quietly say thank you. After Mariko's mother left, Leo opened the packaging, took out the first cup of milk tea, and handed it to me. Mariko isn't very fond of his brother, perhaps because they share the same father but different mothers. Mariko naturally harbors some hostility towards Leo. He says this brother has a peculiar personality and a bad temper. The friends he usually associates with are of dubious character and unaccomplished. At first, I thought Leo was a school bully or a little troublemaker, but when we met, I couldn't connect this quiet and shy boy with the problem student Mariko described. After frequently visiting Mariko and Leo's house, I found that Leo quietly read books and play games in his own room. When I mentioned this to Mariko, he seemed indifferent. Oh, he might have grown up. I found it amusing. You're only 2 years older than your brother, but it seems Mariko's preference for obedient students is quite firm. A message notification popped up on my phone. It was a voice message from my roommate. Don't forget the escape room tonight. You promised to bring your crush. My crush on Mariko is well known. I whispered into the microphone. I'll go alone. He has something on today. My roommate sighed. We're still short of 1 person. We'll have to pair up with a stranger then. I sent Mariko a wicked message with a last glimmer of hope. Not home today. We're going to the escape room tonight. Are you coming? Mariko quickly replied. I might not make it today. Let's go another day. There was nothing I could do but share this bad news with my roommates. We all began frantically searching for someone, and I was asking everyone in my friend list who was available. Suddenly, Leo, who had been watching the whole scene, spoke up. How about I come with you? Leo and I stood in the waiting area of the escape room, looking at Leo. who was 1.8 meters tall. I couldn't help but marvel at how fast kids are growing these days. With his appearance, people would think he was a university student. Who would have thought he was still a minor? My roommates saw me and ran over with smiles, putting their arms around my neck and whispering, "Did you bring him? The guy next to you. He looks pretty handsome." I awkwardly lowered my voice. "That's his younger brother. He won't be 18 for another 2 months." My roommate. She retracted the hand she was about to use to light a cigarette. It seemed she remembered something I had said before, and felt she needed to maintain the image of the good girl in front of Mariko and Leo, let alone with a minor next to me. I took out my phone and saw several messages from Mariko. He had heard that I was going to the escape room tonight and advised me to be safe and come home early. As a girl out alone, I'm worried. "What time will you be done? I'll come pick you up." Seeing these messages, my previous complaints about Mariko vanished. The only benefit of being in love is that I rarely get angry and my frustration quickly fades away. I quickly replied, "No need. Leo is coming with me. We'll go back together." Mariko didn't reply for a while. I took it that he was busy with his own affairs. Just then, the staff asked everyone to turn in their phones and get ready to enter the game room. Before putting away my belongings, I casually checked my social media, and just at that moment, my blood seemed to freeze. A chilling sensation spread through my body. My mind went blank, ears ringing, and my entire body felt numb. Mariko had posted on his social media. It was for photos, the last one being a group photo. A girl was hugging his arm with a sweet smile. The caption read, "This Valentine's Day, I finally don't have to spend it alone." I cried uncontrollably in the women's restroom. My friends thought I had an upset stomach and went into the escape room to wait for me. I cried until I was exhausted, only able to sob silently. How can I describe this feeling? It's like someone who used to send you good morning and good night messages every day, monitored your meals, sleep, and exercise, and stayed on the phone with you late into the night, suddenly disappearing. His tenderness, care, and concern evaporated like bubbles in that moment. You thought you were his special preference. You thought you were melting an iceberg with a sincere heart. But in reality, you were merely a distraction for his boredom. While you were envisioning a future together, he was busy comforting another girl. I recalled every time someone joked about my relationship with Mariko, he would always ambiguously laugh and say, "Darlene and I are bound together for life. We can't be separated. We're not in a hurry. So why should you be?" I thought he was just hesitant to confess due to our friendship. So I waited for him to lose control, waited for him to proudly introduce our relationship to everyone. We've known each other for 5 whole years. When I came out of the restroom and stood in front of the sink, the girl in the mirror wore a white dress, with long hair cascading over her shoulders, but her eyes were red and swollen. Mariko liked girls who were obedient, sweet, and as pure as a little rabbit. So I hid my indifferent temperament and tried hard to disguise myself as a gardenia flower beside him. In front of him, I didn't smoke, drink, or curse, and even play games as if I were a beginner. He always smiled helplessly while rescuing me from awkward situations. "While I'm not here, you're bullying Darlene like this." But it was clear he enjoyed this feeling. Yet, the pretense was still just that, pretend. I wasn't truly the obedient girl, and he was merely an actor deeply immersed in his role. When I exited the restroom, Leo hurried over, frowning. "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" I was stunned. "You didn't go into play." Seeing my red eyes, Leo looked momentarily stunned, then quickly reacted, grabbing tissues to wipe my tears. "Why are you crying? Do you want me to take you home?" Being cared for this way always reminds me of Mariko. If he saw me like this, he would surely be at a loss and gently hug me. My tears fell silently. I turned my head and gently wiped them away with my fingertips. At this moment, the tears were not about grievance, but rather a sense of surviving a nightmare. "I'm just a bit unwell. I'd like to go home first." Leo didn't ask any more questions and silently stayed by my side. My home is not on the same subway line as Mariko and Leo's house, so we had to part ways at the subway station. Leo, perhaps still worried about me, silently swiped his card and entered the station. I smiled wryly. "Why are you coming in? Your home is on the other end." Leo pressed his lips together and smiled innocently. "It's okay. I'm just worried about you. I'll take you to the subway and then leave." It was rush hour, and the subway station was crowded. I waved to Leo, signaling him to go back. When the subway arrived and the doors opened, Leo suddenly said, "Darling, sister, don't be sad over someone who isn't worth it." Before I could react, the crowd had pushed me into the train. Meanwhile, the safety charm hanging from my bag fell onto the platform. I wanted to go back and pick it up, but the crowd was too dense, and I was unable to move. Seeing the charm, Leo approached the platform to pick it up. I quickly shouted at him, Let him pick it up, you don't want it anymore. I didn't want him to pick it up. To me, it had become a source of shame. The charm held a silver ring inside, a handmade DIY ring that Mariko once accompanied me to make. He engraved the initials of both our names, and we each kept one. At that time, Mariko, with his head down chiseling the groove, spoke in a relaxed yet extremely serious tone. You need to keep this ring safe. If we look at it 10 years later, it'll be our 10-year promise. I'd asked him what the 10-year promise was. He laughed and said, it's whatever you want it to be. The statement was vague and left much to the imagination. I indeed took the task of keeping it very seriously, carrying it with me everywhere, afraid of losing it. But it was ultimately just a joke. Only someone who genuinely cared would remember it. So Mariko must have long forgotten. Excuse me, I need to get off. I struggled to squeeze through, hoping to retrieve the charm before Leo discovered the ring. However, the crowded wall of people wouldn't budge no matter how hard I pushed. In the final moment before the train doors closed, I saw him bend down and pick up the charm. At that moment, a silver ring rolled out. When I returned, I immediately set Mariko to do not disturb. For several days, I didn't respond to his messages. Mariko, growing anxious, called me repeatedly, but I couldn't be bothered to answer. This public unrequited love had come to an end. I wasn't a fool. If it weren't for Mariko's tacit approval and ambiguous attitude, I wouldn't have wasted my time on him. He always gave me the illusion that we hadn't become a couple because he was too afraid to move from friends to lovers. He feared that we wouldn't end up together, not even as friends. I felt pity for his cautiousness, his sensitivity and suspicion, so I allowed him to repeatedly toy with me under the guise of friendship. Yes, I did like Mariko very much, but that doesn't mean I would lose my dignity as Darlene just to like someone. Opening my closet, I looked at half of it filled with demure white cotton dresses, and I packed them all up to sell to a second-hand shop. After sorting everything out, I noticed a few missed calls on my phone. Ignoring Mariko's calls, I called Leo back. He answered quickly. It's the last class. We still have one set of practice papers left to discuss. Are you coming today? He added. Mariko won't be back this week. When I arrived at Mariko and Leo's place, Leo looked surprised for a moment before recovering. Without looking up, I said, what? Don't recognize me? Leo was silent for a moment. No, just a bit surprised. I no longer needed to dress up like a harmless gardenia. I changed into my original tank top and short skirt, with smoky eye makeup. This was the real Darlene. After the last class, I felt an indescribable feeling. There was no need to come to Mariko and Leo's place anymore. My relationship with Mariko was now over. Leo suddenly handed me something, and I looked down to see it was the charm that had fallen at the subway station. Leo's voice sounded somewhat apologetic. It seems there was a ring inside, but it rolled into the gap on the platform, and I couldn't find it. I smiled and sighed in relief. It's okay. It's just as well that it's lost. Perhaps Mariko's parents had guessed about my relationship with Mariko, feeling guilty. Or maybe they were afraid I might take things badly. They frequently had Leo take me out for meals and shopping. I looked at Leo, who had just bought me milk tea, and said helplessly, Leo, you're about to take your college entrance exams. Do you still have time to go out for meals on weekends? Leo smiled shyly. It's nothing. This little time doesn't matter to me. Indeed, as long as he doesn't fail, he'll easily make it into a top-tier university. Which school do you want to go to? I asked. Leo thought for a moment and said, just stay in the city. I joked, the only double first-class school in the city is my school. Why don't you come and be my junior? He laughed. Sure. I took it as a joke and didn't pay much attention. After that, Mariko and I became like parallel lines with no intersection. After a while, my roommate organized a drinking party. In the middle of the night, I went, yawning, and my roommate remarked, isn't it vacation time for college entrance exam students? Why are there so many people? Vacation, I groggily remembered. Yes, Leo had finished his exams. A few days later, I asked him on WEC at which school he had gotten into. Passing by a private room, I heard a familiar voice. Didn't your girlfriend come? Is she happy being a junior girlfriend? The boys laughed and joked. Someone said, didn't Brother Yan look very happy recently? He was eating and shopping with his girlfriend every day and could still get into a top-tier university. Impressive. Amid the swirling smoke, Leo lazily tilted his head back and drank the wine in his glass. He looked both arrogant and mischievous. She's been heartbroken for a long time. When most of the people had left, I coldly dragged Leo into the restroom in the private room. I slammed the door shut, grabbing Leo by the collar. I forced him to look down. I stared at him coldly and sneered. Leo, are you playing me like your brother did? He was momentarily stunned. Then, upon recognizing me, fell silent. The cramped restroom barely fit the two of us. After a while, he finally said wearily, "Yes, yes, is there someone so brazen?" The small space was filled with the scent of male hormones, and the alcohol made my throat feel hot. Everything around me seemed like a scene from a game. Under Leo's gaze, it felt as though he was a hunter scrutinizing his prey. This feeling was very unpleasant. Rationality suddenly snapped. I pulled him by the neck and bit his lip playfully, fiercely questioning, "Did you learn your brothers deceitful tricks too? Who did you just say was your girlfriend?" It was a fleeting, superficial kiss. I intended it as a joke, a playful mishap. Leo awkwardly licked his lips, his Adam's apple moving up and down. His voice was husky yet playful. "Did you hear?" He then pulled me close, his arms tightening around me. His breath was hot against my ear, and his breathing became rapid. Leo's tone remained deliberately calm. He whispered, "You said before that I get a reward if I got into your school." At that moment, a noise came from outside the restroom. Someone called out, "Leo, are you here too? I saw your friend. Is it Mariko?" My pupils dilated, and I instinctively tried to push him away, but he held the back of my head and deepened the kiss. When he finally pulled away, I tightly gripped his arm, my ears burning. I glared at him. Leo seemed to understand my expression and leaned closer, whispering playfully, "I'm an adult now." Mariko outside had no idea that there were two people hiding in the restroom. He was still talking to someone else. "Have you seen Darlene recently?" Leo, a head taller than me, made it easy to see the amusement in his eyes. "No." Leo's voice was lazy. "What's wrong?" Mariko sighed. "Nothing. Just heard from her friend that she's been seen dining and shopping with a guy recently." Upon hearing this, Leo smiled and said, "Oh, that guy. I've seen him." Mariko looked stunned and asked urgently, "What's he like?" The instigator at the moment was still holding my waist and wandering his hands on my back. My clothes were disheveled, and my collarbone and other curves were faintly visible. In the cramped restroom, all that could be heard was the clear sound of our heartbeats. Leo looked down and laughed lightly, saying nonchalantly, "He's pretty good." They suit each other well. When Mariko hurriedly left, Leo finally released me. I pushed him away, grabbed my coat from the sink, and prepared to leave. Leo pulled me back. "You're just leaving like this? What else should I do?" I asked with a hint of amusement. "Do you want me to pay for your drinks?" Leo touched the corner of his mouth, his eyes deep. "Was that just a moment of drunkenness for you? Wasn't it for you too?" I yawned lazily. After drinking all night, I was a bit dizzy and didn't feel like discussing deep matters with Leo. "I wish you a satisfactory university life." I waved at him, lowered the brim of my baseball cap. "Go back and get some rest. Good night." The next morning, I woke up with a splitting headache. Leo had only sent a good night with no further messages. I stared at those two words for a long time before tossing my phone aside to wash up. It was just a moment of drunkenness and hormones. I didn't take it seriously. I had been pretending to be the obedient girl Mariko liked for so long that I almost forgot my true, indifferent, and selfish nature. Kissing Leo might have been partly due to being genuinely drunk, but I knew clearly that, on the other hand, it was just because he was Mariko's brother. Mariko used me as a backup, toying with me endlessly. As Mariko's brother, Leo became my target. At that moment, it was truly just a rebellious act of revenge. After washing up, there were a few missed calls from Mariko's mom. I called back, and she expressed her gratitude profusely. She said that thanks to me, Leo had only lost 5 points in his English exam. After a series of thanks, Mariko's mom got to the point. "Darlene, we're having a graduation party at Huelo Land today. You should come too." Before I could refuse, she said, "I'll have someone pick you up downstairs soon." Unable to decline, even though Mariko and I had fallen out, I still had to show respect for Gian dad and Mariko's mom. When the driver picked me up and took me to the hotel, Mariko's mom greeted me warmly and linked arms with me. "Darlene, it's been a while. You haven't come to visit us recently." I felt a bit embarrassed and said, "I've been busy with school lately." Not only had I not visited, but I had also kissed your youngest son just yesterday. I felt a bit guilty inside. As soon as I entered the hallway, I heard a voice from nearby. "Darlene." Mariko frowned and walked toward me. Standing beside him was his girlfriend, who looked at me with a wary expression. Mariko's mom looked a bit awkward and introduced, "This is Tina, Mariko's girlfriend." "Tina, this is Mariko's high school classmate and my goddaughter, Darlene." The girl reluctantly came over and shook my hand, her fingertips cold. Given that I have frequently visited Mariko and Leo's home and traveled with their family, Mariko's mom likely suspected my feelings for Mariko. However, as Mariko's stepmother, She was always accommodating to her eldest son, making the situation awkward for her. When Mariko's mom went to greet other guests, only Mariko, his girlfriend Tina, and I remained in the room. I had never heard of Tina before. She seemed to appear out of nowhere. Nevertheless, she met all of Mariko's expectations for a girlfriend, petite and cute, with a sweet and gentle smile. "Hello, darling. We haven't met before. I heard you're Mariko's high school classmate, so I'll have to ask you more about his high school days." Tina smiled, covering her mouth. "After all, I haven't known him as long as you have, but thank you for accompanying my boyfriend through those happy times." Her words subtly flaunted her status as the official girlfriend. I couldn't help but wonder what Mariko had told her. "It seems like she's the victim." I asked her, "Are you his college classmate?" Mariko, as if realizing something, quickly interrupted. "Tina is someone I met while gaming." "All right, let's go inside and catch up." He glanced at me with a complex expression once again. "Darling, why have I not been able to reach you recently?" I smiled and said, "Sorry, there's nothing to discuss with people who aren't important." At the dinner table, Mr. Jian and Mariko's mom arranged the seating. Mariko suddenly said, "Darling, sit next to me. It's been so long. Let's catch up." Old classmates. As soon as he finished speaking, Leo plopped down next to him. "Mariko." He seemed to hesitate, and Leo pretended not to hear, patting the chair and cheerfully calling, "Darling, sit here." Tina Saturday on the other side of Mariko. Seeing this, she looked slightly displeased but didn't say anything, only redirecting the conversation towards me with a hint of jealousy. "Darling, do you often come to Mariko and Leo's place?" Even though she tried to remain composed, I could still see her panic. What was she afraid of? Afraid that I have a good relationship with Mariko and Leo, or that I might be a goddaughter to Mariko's parents, affecting her status as Mariko's official girlfriend. Under the white tablecloth, someone secretly held my hand. The other person's palm was warm, playfully clutching my fingers tightly. I looked up and met Leo's comforting gaze. He lazily chuckled, his voice not loud but clear enough for everyone around to hear. "She comes often." Tina's expression changed, and Leo casually added, "But don't worry, she would never like my brother." At the table, everyone ate with hidden agendas. Maybe because of Leo's comment, Tina's mood seemed to calm down a bit. Even though she still spoke to me with some probing and caution, I didn't feel irritated. If a girl harbors hostility towards you, I never doubt it's because she's jealous. Because the boyfriend in the relationship must play a role in stirring up the trouble. The root cause isn't her, but rather that her boyfriend hasn't given her a sense of security. Thinking of this, I felt a bit sorry for Tina. Having a playboy boyfriend means she has to stay alert and guard against all kinds of temptations. This world is a giant library, but isn't being in a relationship supposed to be easy? But everyone has their own issues. I'm not a saint, nor will I interface in their relationship. Halfway through the meal, I stepped out of the private room to take a phone call. When I turned back after finishing the call, it was Mariko. After not seeing him for a while, now that I looked at him carefully, I found him quite ordinary. I used to like his youthful energy, but now he just seemed like an average guy, lost in the crowd. I wouldn't even glance back. It was my fantasy that had put a filter on him. "Is there something?" I pulled out a cigarette and lit it, but he quickly stepped forward and snatched it away. "Darling, when did you start smoking?" Mariko's eyes were full of pain. "I didn't know my dating would affect you so much." No, big brother, do you have an overly strong self-awareness?" I sighed. "Mariko, you're overthinking it. I started smoking when I just came of age." He looked up suddenly, incredulous. Does it seem strange to you?" I said with undisguised sarcasm, "so don't act like you know me well." "Darling." Mariko anxiously ran up to pull me. "Are you mad at me? I've been trying to contact you through Weka and calls, but you've ignored me. Are you upset about my dating?" He spoke with heartfelt sincerity, as if I were being unreasonable. "I know I owe you an apology. We've known each other for so many years. This kind of relationship won't change. Even if I'm dating someone, we can go back to how it was before." Before he could finish, I coldly interrupted him. "Go back to what?" "Back to the days when we talk on the phone at midnight, talking for half the night, or when we prepare gifts and flowers for each other on every birthday, or hold hands while walking, or watch movies together until dawn." I found these things laughable now. "Mariko, some things you can deceive me with, but don't deceive yourself. Is that how you interact with friends? Don't you know that there is no such thing as pure friendship between different sexes?" Keeping me as a fish in a pond, thinking he could deceive everyone. pretending to be friends while actually just wanting to play with emotions, like selecting a concubine, dazzlingly offering choices. Mariko's face turned pale as I exposed him. He opened his mouth, turning into a low plea. I didn't. Tina wasn't someone I pursued actively. It was just a spontaneous thing. When we went to a private cinema, he hurriedly pulled me. Darlene, it's not like you think. I haven't been as happy with Tina as I was with you. I've been feeling guilty about you during this time. Seeing that I didn't speak, he slowly approached me. Can we go back to the way things were, Darlene? When we were together, didn't we both enjoy it? Seeing I didn't respond, Mariko sighed in relief and showed a smile. This smile was too familiar. Whenever he used this expression to sweet-talk me, I would surrender. So, to him, am I just a big fool? Slap. I decisively slapped him and coldly said, Mariko, you think two girls fighting over you and vying for your attention is something you deserve? Returning to the private room, I grabbed my bag and prepared to leave. Mariko's mom asked worriedly, Darlene, aren't you staying for dinner? Auntie, I have something at school, so I need to leave, I said apologetically. Looking towards the door, Mariko was still standing there, lost in thought. Tina looked dazed as I brushed past her. I whispered just for the two of us to hear, your boyfriend isn't as great as you think. Think it over again. Tina trembled and looked up in panic, but that was all I said. In the corridor, Mariko was still waiting for me. He smiled, looking worse than when he cried, and his voice turned into a pleading whisper. Darlene, we've known each other for 5 years. Yes? I brushed past him without politeness, smiling. Sorry, my life is long, and I can afford to give 5 short years. Consider it a lesson learned. I haven't lost out. He tried to pull me, but a shadow suddenly approached. Leo blocked him, looking down at me and said, let's go. I'll take you home. Leo. Mariko frowned and scolded. What are you doing? Leo stayed silent. At that moment, my heart was in my throat. I subtly tugged at Leo's sleeve, but he only gave me a deep look. Then he turned to Mariko with a cold smile. Can't you see? My relationship with Darlene might be deeper than you think. Upon hearing this, Mariko's face turned white. Leo calmly added, I forgot to tell you. You asked me to get into Darlene's school and take care of her. I haven't gone back on my word. This seemed to strike a nerve with Mariko. He became furious and tried to charge forward, but Wang Jiao, who came out of the room, grabbed him. Mariko, what are you doing? Yes, what are you doing? Leo subtly stood in front of me, continuing, Darlene isn't your girlfriend, and you haven't even dated her. She's just your high school classmate. I like her. Pursue her. What does that have to do with you? Mariko's chest heaved violently with anger, but I've known him long enough to understand his character. In such a situation, he would never admit to any previous ambiguity with me or make a scene that would embarrass him as a brother. He would just grit his teeth and swallow his anger. Sure enough, Mariko only clenched his fists, forced a smile, and took a deep breath. Why didn't you tell me such a big thing? See, Mariko humbled. I felt secretly pleased. Leo kept giving, and Mariko was really inconsiderate. I patted Leo's shoulder, stepped in front of him, and met Mariko's gaze with a mocking smile. It's not too late to say it now. Perhaps that day stand for Leo gave him the courage and signal. Almost everyone who knows me knows that a junior is pursuing me. Outwardly, Leo is serious and keeps his distance from all girls. But when he sees me, he's like an inescapable pest. In the beginning, I would patiently persuade him, but later, I let him be. Gradually, I seemed to get used to having Leo around. We're similar kinds of people. He doesn't have to pretend to be shy and quiet, and I don't have to pretend to be obedient and gentle. We can hang out together, enjoying ourselves without worrying about damaging our image. During the New Year, Leo said he wanted to take me to see the fireworks. When I went downstairs, I saw him standing under the street lamp, looking like he had been waiting for a long time. What about the exchange of gifts? Leo reached out to me, looking pitiful. You didn't forget, did you? How could I? I hid the gift bag behind me and extended my hand to him. Show me yours first. He smiled and told me to close my eyes. In the darkness, I felt something cold slip onto my finger. Looking down, it was a ring with a diamond set in it. In the light, it sparkled and reflected a kaleidoscope of stars. It fit perfectly on my finger. I looked up in disbelief. How did you know my ring size? Leo laughed, full of youthful vigor. In a daze, I seemed to see the old me. He lowered his gaze and gently ruffled my hair, chuckling. Is that hard to figure out? Happy New Year, Darlene. Winter fireworks exploded behind him. His nose was red from the cold, but it smelled like a foolish puppy that had just found its home. A puppy can't say, I love you, but no matter how late you come home or where you are, as long as you call its name, it will always greet you warmly. You're so silly. I couldn't help but laugh, but my eyes were red. I used to be the one preparing surprises for others. I was willing to do anything for someone else's happiness, but now, someone is willing to do the same for me. I thought you were just pretending to be obedient and sensible. I thought you were just that kind of person. I took out the New Year gift I bought for Mariko and wrapped it around him. Only a fool would change themselves for someone they like. He snuggled into the scarf and didn't argue, just softly laughed him. But I tiptoed and patted his head, smiling with eyes curved like the moon. That's pretty cute too. I really like it. Extra, Leo has a secret. He has a crush on his brother's pursuer. Every time Darlene brings snacks or gifts, after she leaves, Mariko tosses them to him without even looking. Leo, take these. Mariko didn't like Darlene, but he never showed it. So Darlene continued to awkwardly express her affection for Mariko. He thought Darlene liked guys who were gentle, considerate, and quiet like Mariko. So, he also, like her, restrained his temper. People around Leo said that nobody is into pure love these days. He had never been in a relationship and seemed indifferent to everything around him. The only thing he was serious about was his feelings for Darlene, which he invested all his earnestness into over the past 20 years. While others boasted about how many girlfriends they had, or had girls intentionally approach him only to be rejected, former friends would tease him, saying, "Why refuse? There's no loss anyway. It's just for fun." When did sincere affection become something to be embarrassed about? Mariko talked on the phone with different girls every night. He passed by Mariko's room, guessing which of the four female guests, A, B, C, or D, was on the other end of the line that night. Unfortunately, Darlene still thought she was the most special one. He had hinted to Darlene multiple times, but she didn't seem to grasp the deeper meaning, which frustrated him. One time, while Mariko was showering, he opened Mariko's webkit and found that Mariko had categorized different girls into groups. After a moment of silence, he secretly let Darlene out. Later, Mariko's affairs with multiple pros were exposed, but the impact on Darlene seemed great. Watching Darlene cry with red eyes, he felt a deep sense of regret. He felt he shouldn't have done that. On the way back from sending Darlene home, her lucky charm fell on the platform. A silver ring rolled out from inside, engraved with JM. Clever as he was, Leo immediately recognized it as a couple's ring. The owner had kept it in perfect condition, without a single scratch, still shining as new. Holding the silver ring, he visited every DIY silver jewelry store near Darlene's school, inquiring until he finally found the shop where Darlene and Mariko had once made crafts. Located in a mall, the shop owner was very kind and had recorded every customer. On the roster, he found Darlene's online and their ring size was actually 7. Her fingers were so small. Driven by personal desire, Leo also ordered a matching men's band. So what if he had liked someone before? So what if he had made couple rings with someone else? Thanks to this ring, he learned Darlene's ring size. He planned to have a custom ring made for her, encrusted with diamonds, larger and more beautiful. From then on, when he looked at Darlene, his eyes would hide a snowy volcano. The end.